Your grocery bill just jumped 40% this winter, and honestly, that's just the beginning. Last week, I was talking to my buddy Mike, who runs distribution for a major grocery chain, and what he told me made my stomach drop. 11 everyday foods are about to completely vanish from shelves, and most people have absolutely no clue what's coming. I'm talking about items you use every single day. Eggs, coffee, chocolate, gone. And the crazy part? The signs are already there if you know where to look. Stay with me because I'm about to show you exactly what to grab right now before it's too late, and trust me, you don't want to be caught empty-handed when this hits. Items. 1. Eggs. All right, let's dive right into number 1. Eggs. And guys, this one's already hitting hard. I was at my local Walmart last Tuesday, just doing my regular shopping, when I noticed something weird. The egg section, which usually has like 15 different brands and sizes, was down to maybe 4 options. And get this, the cheapest dozen was $6.99, $6.99. I literally laughed out loud because I remember buying eggs for under $2 just a couple years ago. But here's where it gets really concerning. I started digging into why this is happening, and it's way worse than most people realize. We're dealing with the worst avian flu outbreak in decades. I'm talking about millions of chickens being culled across the country. Just this year alone, entire commercial farms have been wiped out. And when I say wiped out, I mean literally every single bird on massive operations. Gone. My neighbor Sarah, who works at a local grocery distributor, told me something that honestly kept me up at night. She said they're getting maybe half their usual egg deliveries, and the prices they're paying wholesale have nearly tripled since last year. Tripled! And here's the kicker. It's not getting better anytime soon. The industry experts are saying we could see egg prices jump another 25% before spring hits. 25% on top of what we're already paying. Do the math? That $6 dozen could easily hit $8 or $9 by February. Here's what you need to do right now. First, if you see eggs under $5 a dozen anywhere, grab at least 2 or 3 dozen. But here's a pro tip most people don't know about. Powdered eggs. Yeah, I know it sounds weird, but these new versions actually taste decent and last up to 7 years. 1 container equals about 40 fresh eggs and costs around $12. That's like getting eggs for 30 cents a dozen when you break it down. Trust me, when your kids are asking for scrambled eggs and you're staring at empty shelves, you'll be glad you thought ahead. Item 2. Chocolate and cocoa products. Now let's talk about something that's going to hurt. Chocolate. And listen, I'm not talking about your fancy artisanal stuff here. I'm talking about regular, everyday chocolate that most families rely on. So picture this. I'm at Target 2 weeks ago with my daughter, and she's begging for her usual Hershey's chocolate chips for baking. We get to the baking aisle, and I nearly choked when I saw the price. What used to be $3.49 was now $6.99, almost doubled. My daughter looks at me and goes, "Dad, why is everything so expensive?" And honestly, I didn't have a good answer for her at the time, but then I started digging into what's really happening, and guys, it's a perfect storm. Most people don't realize that about 70% of the world's cocoa comes from West Africa, places like Ghana and the Ivory Coast, and these regions have been absolutely hammered by extreme weather. We're talking droughts, then torrential rains, then more droughts. It's completely destroyed crop yields. Here's where it gets crazy. Cocoa prices have literally tripled this year. I'm not exaggerating. A ton of cocoa that cost around $4,500 at the beginning of the year hit over $11,000 at one point. That's insane. And you know what? That cost gets passed directly to us. My buddy who works in food distribution told me something that really opened my eyes. He said major chocolate companies are already reformulating their products to use less actual cocoa. So that chocolate bar you love? It might not taste the same pretty soon because they're stretching it with other ingredients just to keep costs down. And here's what really got my attention. Companies like Hershey are actually shifting production away from chocolate products toward non-chocolate candies because the costs are just unsustainable. When a company that's been making chocolate for over a century starts backing away from chocolate, you know something's seriously wrong. Look, I'm not saying go crazy and buy 50 chocolate bars, But if your family enjoys chocolate, whether it's for baking, snacking, or just those moments when you need something sweet, now's the time to grab some extra. Focus on chocolate chips for baking, cocoa powder that lasts forever, and maybe a few of those premium bars while they're still somewhat affordable. Because, trust me, by the time Valentine's Day rolls around, you might be looking at $10 chocolate bars, and that's just the reality we're heading toward. Item 3. Coffee. Number 3 is going to wake you up faster than your morning espresso, coffee. And guys, if you're one of those people who can't function without your daily cup, you need to pay attention to this. So, last month I'm grabbing my usual bag of coffee at Kroger, and I noticed my go-to brand went from $8.99 to $12.49. At first, I thought maybe it was just that store being weird, so I checked 3 other places. Same thing. Coffee prices are quietly skyrocketing, and most people haven't even noticed yet. But here's what really got my attention. I was talking to this guy Carlos, who imports coffee beans for several local roasters, and he told me something that honestly made me panic buy coffee for the first time in my life. He said his suppliers in Brazil and Vietnam, which produce most of the world's coffee, are dealing with the worst weather disasters in decades. Think about it this way. Brazil supplies about 40% of the world's coffee beans, and they've been hit by droughts so severe that entire coffee plantations are just gone. And Vietnam, which gives us most of our cheaper coffee, got hammered by typhoons that wiped out huge sections of their crop. Carlos showed me his wholesale price sheets, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Prices have jumped over 20% just this year, and that's before any of the political stuff that's coming. He mentioned potential tariffs on Brazilian coffee could be as high as 50%. 50%. That means your $12 bag of coffee could easily hit $18 by spring. And here's something most people don't realize. The coffee sitting on store shelves right now was harvested months ago. The real impact of these crop failures hasn't even hit us yet. We're still drinking the good coffee. The expensive coffee is coming. My neighbor Jim, who's a total coffee snob, started buying whole bean coffee in bulk and freezing it in small portions. Turns out whole beans last way longer than ground coffee, and freezing actually preserves the flavor pretty well. He's got about 6 months worth stored up now, and honestly, I thought he was being paranoid until I started seeing the numbers. Here's what you should do. If you see your favorite coffee brand on sale anywhere, grab at least 2 or 3 bags, and consider switching to whole beans if you haven't already. They stay fresh longer and you can grind only what you need. Also, those instant coffee packets that everyone makes fun of, stock up on some decent ones because when regular coffee hits $20 a bag, you'll be glad to have alternatives. Trust me, nothing ruins a morning like realizing you can't afford your daily coffee fix. Item 4. Cooking oils. Number 4 might surprise you. Cooking oils. And listen, I know what you're thinking. It's just oil. How bad could it be? Well, let me tell you what happened to me last month that completely changed my perspective. I'm making dinner for the family, reach for my usual bottle of olive oil, and it's basically empty. No big deal, right? I'll just grab some at the store tomorrow. So I head to my local grocery store, walk down the oil aisle, and I literally stopped in my tracks. The olive oil I usually buy for maybe $6.99 was now $11.49. $11 for a bottle of oil. I thought there had to be some mistake. But then I started looking around, and it wasn't just olive oil. Canola oil, vegetable oil, even the cheap stuff was way more expensive than I remembered. So I asked the store manager, this guy Dave, who I've known for years, what was going on. And what he told me was honestly eye-opening. Turns out Spain and Italy, which produce most of our good olive oil, have been dealing with massive droughts. We're talking about a 30% drop in production. 30%. Dave showed me his wholesale price sheets, and his costs have nearly doubled in just 6 months. He said he's having to choose between raising prices or just not carrying certain brands anymore. And it's not just olive oil. Canada, which gives us most of our canola oil, had terrible crop yields last year. South America's been hit with droughts affecting their soybean production. Even palm oil from Indonesia is having supply issues because of export restrictions and weather problems. Here's something that really opened my eyes. My sister-in-law works for a major food distributor, and she told me they're seeing restaurants switching to cheaper oils or cutting back on fried foods entirely because they just can't afford the oil costs anymore. When restaurants are changing their entire menus because of oil prices, you know something's seriously wrong. But here's where I learned a hard lesson. During the last oil shortage a couple years back, I had stocked up on this big jug of olive oil thinking I was being smart. 6 months later, I open it and it tastes like cardboard. Rancid. Completely wasted $40 because I didn't know that oil goes bad when exposed to air and light. So here's what you need to know. First, coconut oil is your best friend right now. It stays good for years, doesn't go rancid easily, and you can use it for everything from cooking to baking. Second, avocado oil might seem expensive, but it has the highest smoke point of any oil, so you can literally use it for anything. Deep frying, sautéing, whatever. And here's the storage hack that could save you hundreds of dollars. Buy smaller bottles instead of those huge jugs. Yeah, it might seem more expensive per ounce, but oil starts going bad the minute you open it. Better to have fresh oil than waste money on rancid stuff. If you see any cooking oil on sale right now, especially the ones you actually use, grab an extra bottle or two. But remember, rotate through them. Use the oldest first, and write the date you bought it on the bottle with a permanent marker. Trust me, there's nothing worse than ruining a perfectly good meal with oil that's gone bad. Item 5. Sugar and sweeteners. Number 5 is something that's in literally everything we eat, and most people don't even think about it. Sugar. And guys, this one's been flying under the radar, but it's about to hit us hard. So I'm at the grocery store last weekend, and my wife asked me to grab some regular white sugar for her baking. Simple enough, right? I get to the baking aisle, and I'm staring at a 5-pound bag of sugar for $489. Now, I'm not exactly tracking sugar prices like some kind of commodity trader, but that seemed high. So I checked my grocery app, and sure enough, that same bag was $2.99 just 8 months ago. But here's where it gets really concerning. I started asking around, and my friend Lisa, who runs a small bakery downtown, told me something that made my jaw drop. She said her wholesale sugar costs have gone up 60% since the beginning of the year. 60%. She's having to raise her cake prices just to stay in business, and customers are starting to complain. So I did some digging, and the situation is way worse than I thought. India, which is the world's second largest sugar producer, basically said, "We're keeping all our sugar and banned exports to other countries." They had terrible growing conditions and decided to protect their domestic supply first. Can't really blame them, but that leaves the rest of us scrambling. And Brazil, which produces the most sugar globally, has been dealing with severe droughts that have crushed their crop yields. My cousin, who works in food importing, told me that sugar futures, that's basically betting on future sugar prices, have been going absolutely crazy. Traders are predicting prices could double before summer hits. Here's what really got my attention, though. I was talking to the manager at my local Walmart, and he mentioned they've already started getting emails from corporate about potential sugar rationing. Not rationing like we can't buy it, but limiting how much each customer can purchase at once. When Walmart starts thinking about purchase limits, you know something big is coming. Now, here's the thing about sugar. It basically lasts forever if you store it right. I learned this from my grandmother, who lived through some tough times. Keep it in an airtight container away from moisture, and it'll be good for years. So if you do any baking at all, or even just use sugar for your coffee, grabbing an extra 5 or 10-pound bag right now makes total sense. But here's some alternatives most people don't think about. Honey never goes bad. Literally never. Archaeologists have found honey in Egyptian tombs that's still edible thousands of years later. Maple syrup lasts practically forever too if it's real maple syrup, not that corn syrup stuff. And brown sugar actually stores better than white sugar because of the molasses content. It's less likely to clump up and stays fresher longer. Look, I'm not saying hoard 50 pounds of sugar in your basement, but if you use it regularly for baking, coffee, or whatever, having a couple extra bags stored properly could save you serious money and frustration down the road. Because when sugar hits $6 or $7 for a 5-pound bag, you're going to wish you grabbed some at today's prices. Item 6. Wheat products and flour. Number 6 is something that's in almost everything we eat, but most people never think about it until it's too late. Flour and wheat products. And this one's hitting way closer to home than you might realize. So I'm at Costco 2 weeks ago, and I decide to grab some flour because my wife's been on this homemade bread kick lately. I walk over to where they usually have those big 25-pound bags of flour for like $12, and there's maybe 3 bags left. That's weird for Costco. They usually have pallets of this stuff. So I grab one, and when I get to checkout, it rings up at $18.99. $18 for flour. The cashier even looked surprised and double-checked the price. But here's what really opened my eyes. I was talking to my buddy Mark, who owns a local pizza place, and he told me his flour costs have absolutely exploded. He's paying almost double what he was last year just for basic bread flour. He said if it gets much worse, he's going to have to raise his pizza prices again, and customers are already complaining about the last increase. So I started digging into why this is happening, and guys, it's a perfect storm. Ukraine and Russia together produce about 20% of the world's wheat. That's 1/5 of global supply. And with the ongoing war, Ukrainian farmers either can't plant their crops or can't get them to market safely. Meanwhile, Russia's been restricting their wheat exports to keep domestic prices stable. But it's not just the war. My neighbor's brother farms wheat in Kansas, and he told me something that really concerned me. He said between drought conditions, crazy weather patterns, and skyrocketing fertilizer costs, a lot of smaller wheat farmers are just throwing in the towel. They can't make ends meet anymore. And here's something most people don't realize. It's not just about bread and pasta. Flour is in everything. Pizza dough, cookies, cakes, even some sauces use flour as a thickener. When flour prices go up, it ripples through the entire food system. My sister works at a commercial bakery, and she said they've started mixing different types of flour just to keep costs down. They're using more corn flour and rice flour to stretch their wheat flour supply. She said the taste and texture of some products has definitely changed, but they don't have much choice. Here's what you need to know about buying flour right now. First, all-purpose flour is your best bet because it's the most versatile. You can use it for bread, baking, whatever. Bread flour is great if you're serious about making homemade bread, but it's more expensive and less flexible. And here's a storage tip that could save you money. Flour can actually last up to 8 months if you store it properly. Keep it in an airtight container in a cool, dry place. Some people even freeze it for a few days first to kill any potential bugs, then transfer it to storage containers. Don't sleep on alternative flours either. Almond flour, coconut flour. Yeah, they're pricier up front, but they last longer and give you options when regular flour gets scarce or too expensive. If you do any baking at all, cookies for the kids, homemade pizza, whatever, having an extra 5 or 10-pound bag of flour stored away is just smart planning right now. Because when that bag of flour hits $25 or $30, you're going to be really glad you stocked up when it was still somewhat reasonable. Item 7. Rice and grains. Number 7 is rice and grains, and this is where major retailers are quietly implementing those purchase limits I mentioned earlier. Last week, I'm at Costco doing my usual bulk shopping run, and I noticed their big bags of jasmine rice that I normally grab are completely gone. The employee restocking nearby tells me they've been selling out within hours of getting shipments. So I check Sam's Club, BJ's, same story everywhere. Here's what's really happening. China and Pakistan, two of the world's biggest rice producers, got absolutely hammered by flooding this year. And I'm not talking about normal seasonal flooding. This was catastrophic. The USDA came out and said the damage to rice production was even worse than initially expected. That's government speak for, we're in trouble. My brother-in-law, who works in food distribution, showed me an internal memo from his company. They're already advising stores to limit rice purchases to 2 bags per customer. He said wholesale rice prices have jumped 40% in just 3 months, and they're expecting another increase before winter hits. But here's what most people don't know. Brown rice is actually more nutritious than white rice, and it's still available everywhere because people automatically reach for white rice. Same with quinoa and other grains that nobody thinks about during shortages. Stock up on variety now while you still can, because when people start panic buying, everything disappears fast. Item 8. Canned goods. Number 8 is canned goods, and this one's hitting from two directions: crop failures and packaging shortages. I was at my local grocery store helping my elderly neighbor Mrs. Chen with her shopping, and she's looking for her usual canned tomatoes. Half the shelf was empty, and what was there had gone from 89 cents to $1.49 per can. She looked at me and said, "This reminds me of the rationing during wartime." The problem is aluminum. There's a massive shortage of aluminum cans, and it's affecting everything from pet food to vegetables. My friend who manages a regional grocery chain told me their suppliers are having to choose which products get cans first. And guess what gets priority? Beer and soda, because they make more money. But it's not just the packaging. Weather disasters have destroyed crops that go into canned goods. Tomato crops in California got hit by unusual weather patterns, and corn processing plants are running behind because of labor shortages. Here's my strategy. Every time I go shopping, I grab 2 or 3 extra cans of things we actually use. Tomatoes for pasta sauce, beans for chili, whatever. The key is buying what you'll actually eat, not just random canned stuff. And check expiration dates. Canned goods last year's, but you want the freshest you can get. Don't wait until everyone else figures this out, because empty canned goods aisles are coming faster than people think. Item 9. Baby formula. Number 9 is critical if you have a baby or know someone who does. Baby formula. And guys, this shortage never really ended from a couple years ago. My sister just had her second baby, and finding her preferred formula has become like a treasure hunt. She showed me her phone with alerts set up for 6 different stores, just hoping to catch formula when it comes in stock. This is 2025, and we're still dealing with this. The problem is there are only a few major manufacturers, and they're still struggling to meet demand after those contamination issues shut down production facilities. My pediatrician told me something that really concerned me. They're seeing parents watering down formula to make it last longer, which is dangerous for babies. Here's what's happening behind the scenes. A nurse at our local hospital said they're creating priority lists for parents who need specific formulas for babies with allergies or medical conditions. The specialty formulas are disappearing first because they're harder to manufacture, and there are fewer alternatives. European brands that helped during the last shortage are facing tighter import regulations, so those backup options are becoming scarce too. If you're expecting a baby or have one now, don't wait to stock up on formula. And if you know someone who's pregnant, maybe mention this to them, because most expecting parents aren't thinking about formula shortages. Talk to your pediatrician about backup options now, not when you're desperate at 2 a.m. with a hungry baby and empty shelves. Item 10. Winter vegetables. Number 10 is winter vegetables, and this one's going to hit fresh produce hard over the next few months. I was talking to my local farmer at the weekend market, and he told me something that really opened my eyes. He said the weird weather patterns are messing up traditional growing seasons. Vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts that normally thrive in cool weather are struggling because temperatures have been all over the place. My friend who works produce at a major grocery chain said they're already getting warnings about potential shortages of fresh winter vegetables starting in January. The suppliers are telling them to expect tight availability and price volatility, corporate speak for shortages and expensive vegetables. But here's something most people overlook. Frozen vegetables are often more nutritious than fresh ones that have been sitting in trucks and storage for weeks. They're flash frozen right after harvest, locking in nutrients. Plus, they last months instead of days. California, which grows most of our winter produce, is dealing with water restrictions and unpredictable weather. And transportation costs keep going up, so even when vegetables are available, they're expensive to ship. My strategy has been loading up on frozen broccoli, cauliflower, and mixed vegetables whenever I see them on sale. They're perfect for soups, stir-fries, and side dishes. Root vegetables like potatoes, carrots, and onions store well too if you keep them in a cool, dark place. Don't wait until February when fresh vegetables are scarce and expensive. Stock up on frozen alternatives now. Item 11. PT food. Number 11. Might surprise you, but don't forget about your furry family members. Pet food is facing serious shortages. My dog Max has been on the same prescription diet for kidney issues for 3 years, and last month our vet told us they can't get it anymore. The manufacturer is having supply chain issues and can't give us a timeline for when it'll be back. We had to scramble to find an alternative, and it took weeks to transition him safely. The problem is, wet pet food especially. It uses the same aluminum cans that human food companies need, and pet food gets lower priority. My friend who works at a pet store said their wet food deliveries have been cut by 60% compared to last year. Customers are getting frustrated because their pets are picky eaters and won't switch brands easily. But it's not just packaging. Many pet food ingredients come from the same agricultural sources that are facing shortages: corn, chicken, beef. When human food gets expensive, pet food costs go up too. I've seen premium dog food jump from $45 to $65 for the same bag in just 6 months. Here's what you need to do if you have pets. First, stock up on wet food if your pets eat it, because that's disappearing fastest. Second, buy larger bags of dry food. They're more economical and store better. Third, if your pet has special dietary needs or prescription food, talk to your vet about alternatives now. Don't wait until your pet's favorite food is gone to start thinking about this. They depend on us to plan ahead. Look, I'm not trying to create panic here, but these patterns are undeniable. The signs are all there if you're paying attention. Here's what you need to do. Start gradually. Don't go crazy and clear out store shelves, but next time you're shopping, grab 2 or 3 extra items from this list. Focus on stuff your family actually uses, not random things you'll never eat. The smart move is spreading this out over the next few weeks. Buy what makes sense for your household and your budget. And honestly, even if I'm wrong about some of this, you're just stocking up on food you'll use anyway. Which of these 11 items are you grabbing first? Drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one, and I love hearing your strategies. And, hey, if this helped you prepare for what's coming, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. I'll be tracking these shortages every week and updating you on what's actually happening in stores versus what the news is reporting. Next week, I'm revealing the 5 items that grocery managers are telling me will be completely gone by February. You won't want to miss that one. Trust me, when everyone else is fighting over the last bag of rice, you'll be glad you watched this video and took action today. Stay prepared, stay smart, and I'll see you in the next one.